Hello friends, welcome to this session of course Latest Trends in Pedagogy and Assessment conducted by National Resource Center for Education, Central University of South Bihar. I am Rinki from School of Education, Central University of South Bihar, Gaya. In this tutorial, we will talk about a very significant and relevant topic related to assessment practices. But before coming to the specific topic, let me share with you an incident which is a common phenomena of Indian classrooms and you might have encountered in your classroom as well. This is a case of undergraduate college where few students, after getting grades on a term paper, were dissatisfied with their results. They could not find out the reasons of their poor grades instead of putting all their efforts in preparing the term paper. They wanted to know the criteria on which they were marked. On the other side, after assessing the work of the students, the teacher was wondering why few students were not able to perform well. When students approached the concerned teacher and shared their concern, the teacher realized that students were not aware about what they were supposed to learn and produce in the term paper. In other words, they were unaware about the academic expectations and some of the elements they skipped to include in the term paper because they overlooked their importance. This kind of problem probably will never arise if we use rubric appropriately as an assessment tool for this sort of assignment. By sharing it with the students in advance, both teacher and students can be set on the path to maximize the learning of the students. Apart from this, if rubrics are used carefully with planning, many kinds of learning problems can be solved. So, in this session, we will discuss a very significant topic, preparing rubrics. In order to develop comprehensive understanding of the rubrics and its construction, we need to go through the various parts of this module, which includes 2 video lectures, 1 written text and some web resources. In the first video session, we will discuss the basic concept of rubrics, like what is rubric and what kind of performances can be assessed with the help of rubrics. We will also discuss that when do you need to use rubrics, that is, under what circumstances you will not afford to avoid using rubrics in your classroom. And lastly, what are the different types of rubrics? The construction of rubrics shall be discussed in the second video session. So, let us start and identify what a rubric is. A rubric is a scoring and instructional tool that lays out the specific expectations for a task. In rubric, the clearly stated criteria are used to sort out level of performance into various categories. In 2013, S.M. Brookhart defined rubric as a coherent set of criteria for students' work that includes descriptions of levels of performance quality on the criteria. The definition given by Brookhart clearly indicates that a rubric should essentially has 2 aspects. One is coherent sets of criteria and another is descriptions of level of performance for these criteria. Let us see an example of rubric which is available on the website of George Mason University. The rubric which is shown on the screen is for assessing a research paper. As you can see, this is a grid-like structure and on the left side the criteria are listed and on the top of each column the scale levels are written. For this, the criteria developed are visual presentation, abstract, structure, research, thinking and interest factor. The scale levels selected are outstanding, good, fair and unacceptable. On each box of the grid, a description for the performance for each level of each criterion is written. Let us see the descriptions under each level for the criteria abstract. The description under the outstanding level for the criteria abstract is of proper length, highly informative, complete and easy to understand. Appropriate vocabulary is used. Abstract makes you want to read the paper. The description under the level good is abstract is of proper length, informative, complete and understandable. Appropriate vocabulary is used. The description under the level fair is abstract is of proper length, somewhat informative and understandable. Under the level unacceptable is abstract is not of proper length, not very informative or understandable. In the same way, descriptions are written for each level under each category. This rubric is provided in the text for your reference, with the help of which a research paper can be assessed. In the same way, many other kinds of work and assignments can be assessed with the help of rubrics. While moving ahead, let us see what kind of works can be assessed with the rubrics. The primary purpose of rubrics is to assess the performances. Some performances may involve students to get engaged in the process of doing something, like playing a musical instrument, performing a dance, doing gymnastics, typing, preparing a slide for the microscope, performing an experiment, following a set of procedure when dissecting a frog, teaching in the classroom, making a speech to the class, reading aloud, street play or drama conducted by the learners, conversing in a foreign language, conducting research, visit to the community with a specific purpose as part of the course, etc. We may assess critical thinking, creativity or problem solving skill as well. The other performances may involve them in producing some work in the form of a product, like a research report, laboratory report, magazine article, lesson plans, concept map, written answer of an essay question, poem, story, diagram of structure like diagram of atom, flower or planetary system, or it may include any kind of exhibit, map, graph, watercolor painting, handmade product, etc. So, almost all kinds of the performances in educational institutions can be assessed effectively with the rubrics, except the test items or oral questions that demand the answers in right or wrong format. That is, the questions which have clear correct answers. Now, let us move to another segment and try to understand those indications which show that you may need to use rubrics. In this context, in 2005, Steven and Levy suggested few situations which indicate that you should not avoid using rubrics in your classroom. You need to use rubric if you write the same or similar comments repeatedly for several students while assessing their work. If you find assignments are pending to be checked and you are far behind to finish this by deadline. If after grading all the papers or work, you worry that the last one is graded slightly different than the first one, even with the same submission. If after grading few papers, you realize students did not understand what they were supposed to learn. If sometimes you get disappointed by the whole assignment because you realize that your students were unaware of the academic expectations so basic that you neglected to mention them. If you realize that time required to explain the class about a very carefully planned assignment is too long, or sometimes even after explaining it to the learners, or even after giving a long narrative descriptions about the assignment in the syllabus, they continually ask questions in the classes about your expectations. If you have designed a complex assignment that incorporates all the work over the term and find it difficult to communicate all the diverse expectations easily and clearly to the students. If you are designing the same assignment for the course in collaboration with your colleagues and wonder that your grading scales are different. If your students express concerns about your grading and you perhaps wonder sometimes if they are right. So friends, if you find any of these true for you, then I will suggest you should definitely start using rubrics in your classrooms. It can help you to address all these concerns. To move further, let us see the various types of rubrics. It can be classified in many ways. However, S.M. Brookhart has classified rubrics by keeping two aspects under consideration. One aspect is whether the rubric contains the criteria one at a time or together. On this basis, rubrics are classified in two types: analytic rubrics and holistic rubrics. The other aspect is whether the rubric is general and could be used with a family of similar tasks, or is task specific and only applicable for assessing a particular task once. On this basis, rubrics can be classified again into two types: general rubrics and task specific rubrics. The example of research paper rubric, which we have seen previously in this tutorial, falls in the category of analytic rubric. In analytic rubric, there are several indicator categories or criteria and level of performance for each category. In other words, work on each criterion for various levels is described separately in analytic rubrics. Here on the screen, you can see the template which we may use for analytic rubric. The design of the analytic rubric on a grid format contains four parts: task description, which is written at the top; indicator categories, which may be called criteria or dimension and is written on the left side here; the scale levels, which indicate level of performance, and these take the uppermost part of each column. And the last part is the descriptions of performance under each scale level for each category. These descriptions are written on these boxes. Teacher rates each category or criterion separately in order to differentiate level of performance within and among categories. Hence, learners receive detailed and specific feedback of their performance, which may be utilized by them for improving their performance. Now, let us move ahead and discuss about holistic rubric. In holistic rubric, works are described by applying all the criteria at the same time under each level. In pictorial form, it looks like the figure which is displayed on your screen. This figure contains three visible parts: the task description, the scale levels written on the left side of the table, and the descriptions of performances under each level. As I have told that in holistic rubric, work is described by applying all the criteria at the same time under each level. So, the criteria are present in the hidden form in the descriptions of performances. It enables the teacher to assess the quality of the performance as a whole without focusing on separate components. Though it does not provide specific or detailed feedback to the learner, but gives a quick evaluative picture of the work. Now, let us see the example of analytic rubric and holistic rubric for creativity. Here is the analytic rubric for assessing creativity. In this rubric, the dimensions or criteria developed are depth and quality of ideas, variety of sources utilized, organization and combination of ideas, and originality of contribution. The chosen scales or level of performance spreads from very creative to imitative. The highest level of performance which is expected from the learner is termed very creative, and the lowest level of performance which may be displayed by the learners, however, is completely undesirable, is termed as imitative. The second scale level is termed as creative, and the third one is termed as ordinary or routine. Under the scale level very creative, for the criteria depth and quality, it is expected from the learners that they will present ideas which represent a startling variety of important concepts from different disciplines. Those who may be rated under creative level of the same criteria are expected to present ideas which represent important concepts from different context or discipline. For ordinary level, the presentation of the ideas should be able to represent the important concepts from the same or similar disciplines. And under imitative level, the description is stated as ideas do not represent important concepts. Similarly, for each category and scale level, the expected level is described, which you can see in this rubric. The rubric is provided as supplementary text for your reference. Moving ahead, let us see the holistic rubric for assessment of creativity. Here is the holistic rubric for assessing creativity. In this, the same scale levels are used which were used in the analytic rubric, that is very creative, creative, ordinary and imitative. As we know, the different components of the task, that is the criteria, is not represented in the distinctly visible form in the holistic rubric. So, here too, instead of representing the criteria or different components of the task separately, they are used together. Let me clarify it again that all the criteria are present in the holistic rubric as of analytic rubric, which were shown previously. It is just that we are applying all the criteria at the same time for overall judgment about the quality of work. So, in the holistic rubric for creativity, the scale level very creative includes all the highest levels of learning performance together, which were given under each criterion shown in analytic rubric. In other words, the descriptions under the level very creative for all the criteria from the analytic rubric for creativity are merged together and will constitute the description for very creative level in holistic rubric. Let us see the description under the level very creative in holistic rubric for creativity. The first statement of the description is, ideas represent a startling variety of important concepts from different contexts or disciplines. This statement was the description for the level very creative under the criterion depth and quality of ideas in analytic rubric for creativity. The second statement of the description is, created product draws on a wide ranging variety of sources including different text, media, resources and personal experiences. This was the description for the level very creative under the criterion variety of sources in analytic rubric. The third statement of the description is, ideas are combined in original and surprising ways to solve a problem, address an issue or make something new. It was the description for the level very creative under the criterion organization and combination of ideas in analytic rubric for creativity. The fourth and the last statement of the description is, created product is interesting, new and helpful, making an original contribution that includes identifying a previously unknown problem, issue or purpose. It was the description for the level very creative under the criterion originality of contribution in analytic rubric. Here we have understood that how the descriptions of each criterion under the highest scale level, that is very creative in our case of analytic rubric, may be merged together to produce description for the holistic rubric under the same level. It also shows that all the criteria of analytic rubric for creativity under the scale level very creative are present in the same scale level of holistic rubric for creativity in hidden form. In the same way, the descriptions are written for other scale levels, which you can see in detail while going through the supplementary text provided to you. Both types of rubrics have their own speciality and can be used accordingly. Analytic rubric is suitable for most of the classroom purposes and can be used for formative as well as summative assessment. It allows the teacher as well as learner to focus on one criterion at a time and hence serves the purpose of formative assessment, where learners get to know about their strengths and weaknesses for a specific component or skill of learning, and hence know what kind of attention is required for which component of work. Holistic rubrics can be preferred over analytic rubric when the information obtained with this will not be used for any other purpose except grading, which makes it more suitable for summative assessment. Now, let us move to another group of rubrics, that is generic or general rubric and task-specific rubric. In general rubrics, those criteria and descriptions of performances are included which may be applied across disciplines or content area. It can be used with different tasks of similar performances and has wider application. In general rubric, learners encounter the same expectations of learning outcomes each time they approach a similar task. For instance, problem solving and writing ability of the learners can be assessed with the generic rubrics. Each time learners solve a problem, they know that certain key elements of learning must be present regardless of the specific problem. Single general rubrics can be used for many similar kinds of assignments, and hence there is no need to prepare rubric for every assignment. It describes the learner's performances in a style that allow for various paths to success. As general rubrics do not include any specific information that learners are expected to include in the response to a task, it can be shared with the students at the beginning of the assignment in order to help them in planning and monitoring their own work. It focuses the teacher on developing the knowledge and skills among the learners rather than completion of a particular task by them. In contrast, the task-specific rubrics are specific to the performance task with which they are used. It includes the specific descriptions of performance related to a particular problem. It contains the answers to a particular problem, may list facts and concepts or explain the reasoning that learners are supposed to mention and use. In other words, it details the elements to look for in the student's performance on a particular task. It is like a scoring guide for a teacher to grade the performance of the students. Scoring learners' response with the help of a task-specific rubric is comparatively a lower inference work for a teacher than using general rubric, because task-specific rubrics contain details of the elements which should be looked for in the student's response to a particular task. Consequently, sharing it with the students in advance is not a good idea, and therefore, it is not useful for formative assessment. Task-specific rubrics actually sacrifice a major purpose of using rubrics for helping learners to conceptualize and monitor progress of their own learning. Often, it is used when assessment on the same task has to be done at mass level. Hence, task-specific rubrics are widely used throughout the world for the national level of assessment surveys. All the rubrics which we discussed before are examples of generic rubrics. Let us see the example of a task-specific rubric. Here you can see on the screen the physical science question designed to assess practical reasoning along with the task-specific rubric for scoring it. In this particular question, pictures of runner 1 and runner 2 are given, and the question states that the picture above shows the positions of two runners at 1 second interval as they move from left to right. For each runner, indicate whether the runner's speed seems to be constant, increasing or decreasing. Explain how you can tell this from the pictures. The corresponding task-specific rubric is based on the design of holistic rubric and uses 4 scale levels: complete, essential, partial and unsatisfactory. To understand the speciality of task-specific rubrics, we need to look at the description carefully. The description for the complete scale level is: student correctly indicates that runner 1 has a constant speed because equal distances are covered each second, and that runner 2's speed is increasing because increasing distances are covered in each successive second. Here you can note that the descriptions have included the specific answers of the question. In other scale levels too, the elements of correct answers are included, and hence this particular rubric cannot be shared with the students in advance. So friends, in this session we have learnt about the basic concepts of rubrics, different types of rubrics, that is analytic, holistic, general and task specific rubrics. We also developed understanding about the relative strengths and limitations of these kinds of rubrics. Here references are provided for you which are displayed on your screen. I hope you must have found this lesson useful. In continuation of this video, I will meet you virtually in another video tutorial where we can learn how to construct a rubric. Best wishes for your course. Thank you.